I'm Rob Dietz.
I'm Jason Bradford.
And I'm Asher Miller. Welcome to Crazy Town, where the population of delusional ass clowns is only growing at 7% a year.
Hi, this is Crazy Town producer Melody Allison. Thanks for listening. Here in Season 6, we're exploring escape routes, pathways that just might get us out of Crazy Town. In today's episode, Jason, Rob, and Asher are escaping Growthism. And here's a quick warning. Sometimes this podcast uses swear words.
Language!
If you like what you're hearing, please let some friends know about Crazy Town. Now, on to the show.
Hey guys, Rob, Jason, how are you?
Good afternoon. I'm doing well.
Yeah,
Good.
I think I'm doing pretty well too. We'll see at the end of this episode.
Yeah, see how this goes.
We'll check in.
All right.
Okay, so I want to start today by asking you a hypothetical question, which maybe not actually that hypothetical. You never know what happens in
Sure.
life. So let's just say you were to inherit, I don't know, $600 million, half the shares in a company that makes billions of dollars every year from people getting killed.
Ooh.
And then a bunch of your loved ones die in a matter of years. So, yeah, I'm just curious, what would you do with all the money you had?
Right.
That's a weird hypothetical. Like I thought you would just stop at what if I inherited money, but it has to be in a company that kills people and then all my loved ones die.
Exactly. Yeah, so just channel that for a minute.
Well, I think I'm buying an island. I mean, I've been listening to Crazy Town. This is the 6th season. It's clear that you got to get a bunker somewhere down in the Indian Ocean or the South Pacific.
Can
maybe.
you get an island for $600 million?
Yeah. I think Indian Ocean might get too hot, so something else.
I own a bunch of shares in a killing company.
Oh, right.
Maybe it's like
if you hold on to the shares, you can keep going.
Well, and maybe they got like warships, and I can get one.
Oh, right.
And it can defend my island.
Yeah, you could be one of those seasteaders or whatever and like outfit a survivalist ship or some kind. All right. Well, I think I would stay closer to home because I have I have friends here, so if I'm missing my family because they're all dead, I would probably want to hang close to friends. Rob will be gone on a ship somewhere, but I have others.
I didn't say you both get the money.
Okay. But anyhow, I'd send them off on a ship. I'd have plenty to do that too. Yeah. But I also want to kind of feel better after what just happened. So I'd build grass and clay tennis courts here at the property. Okay. I'd hire a full-time bird guide. And
so you're really feeding the local economy.
Oh, yeah. Oh. And they would help me develop the place to be a bird sanctuary kind of heaven. I'd probably build one of those giant biodomes, that you've ever been one like you go to these like Academy of Sciences.
You have your own arboretum.
And it'd be tropical plants and birds and little marmosets in it.
You have lorikeets landing on your shoulder to drink nectar from a cup.
Yeah, and in the middle of winter, I go in, there's heliconias and all this sort of stuff.
That's nice.
I would probably have a business that someone would run for me of doggy, it's like a doggy camp. Like people show up and they're like doggy spa day and there's play things. And I just go out and I hang out with the dogs whenever I wanted to. I'd do that. I'd hire a full-time chef to cook food for me, but of course it'd be food coming from the farm. And it'd all be seasonal and stuff and organic. And the farm would be like the permaculture blitzed out place, 100 acres of just incredible, orchards and grains and beans.
See, this is why you're our visionary. I'm more misanthropic. I'm like Tom Hanks in Castaway, living on an island by myself.
It also seems like you've given this a lot of thought.
Yeah.
Like maybe it isn't hypothetical. Maybe there's something in your backstory we're not aware of.
I would like that to be, if anyone's thinking about like leaving some fortune to somebody, I've got a plan, as you can tell.
Apparently.
I'd raise those pigs for you, and I'd hire an entire staff to dry out those thyroids.
Yeah, so our billionaire listeners, we got a proposal for you here.
Yeah.
Okay, so here, I thought you guys were just going to say that you take like an already gigantic house and you just spent decades building like weird rooms and dead-end hallways on it until you died.
Okay, so I know this place.
You know what I'm talking about.
Because I grew up in Cupertino, California.
Home of Apple.
Home of Apple, yes. Yeah, I started programming when I was 11 on an Apple.
So this is where you got the $600 million.
I invested early.
In Apple. Got it.
Yeah, Basic. I programmed in Basic. That's as far as I went. Anyhow, but this is the Winchester Mystery House. And it's about 15 minutes from my house, right next to a bunch of movie theaters. So I would go see like Indiana Jones and the Star Wars. I remember Empire Strikes Back. I would be in line. And the Winchester Mystery House is right next to these movie theater complexes in San Jose.
I
right
like
off
that,
of 280.
I like that it's not just the Winchester house. You got to add the mystery to
house.
it.
Well, so the history was in the 1800s, this woman inherited the Winchester rifle fortune.
Exactly.
And she moved from Connecticut to San Jose, which at the time was a paradise. This is in like the mid 1800s.
Orchards, right?
Oh, I mean, the weather there is incredible. And it was just bucolic as can be. And there's this big old farmhouse that she inherited, or she bought to better weather. But she just started building. I guess she was into architecture, and her husband died, and like her sister died.
Yeah, a bunch of family members died.
Yeah, so she just started building, and it just went on and on.
It took me till just now to understand your hypothetical question. So she inherited $600 million.
The equivalent of $600 million.
And then she inherited her money from all the people getting shot by Winchester rifles.
Yes. And the place is
a bunch of her
interesting.
family died.
Yeah. It's a weird place because it at one point, I think there were 500 rooms in the house, but part of it burnt down during the earthquake of 1906 or whatever. And so now it's down to 160 or something. So it's not all there, but it's plenty. It was like 47.
And it's nonsensical, right?
It doesn't make sense.
That's the whole point, is that there literally are hallways at dead end. Stairs that go nowhere.
Right. So the idea was that she was completely insane and that she believed in ghosts and that if they stopped building, she would die. But maybe she was just thinking about future additions. So the hall ends now, but it's going to keep going later.
Yeah.
It almost sounds like the mentality of a hoarder, but instead of putting a bunch of stuff in your house, you're just adding more house.
But maybe she's just doing what you were just describing, Jason, which is employing a lot of people in the local community.
Totally.
So she was just, she's trying to spend her money on
Think about
local families.
the craftsmanship, like all that, and the wood in this place, like the redwood and all this. Amazing.
So did you ever go there, Jason?
Oh, yeah, of
you went
course.
inside, so
Kids did.
You can just run around and find the dead ends, or what happens?
No, they're tours. You're like with 20 people shuffling through these dark hallways and stuff.
That's sad. It would be awesome if it was a free-for-all and you just
get lost like a maze.
Right. They find somebody who's been there for 32 years.
Yeah.
Right. Just skeleton.
This wing is a very large escape room.
Right. Anyways, the reason I thought about the Winchester Mystery House is it's not so much about her, Sarah Winchester, or her story. It's thinking about that house as kind of a metaphor for the global economy. Like the need to just keep growing, which leads to a bunch of dead ends, illogical rooms, just
why
a
are
ton
we
of
doing
absurdity,
this?
Right? And that is the topic of today's episode, where we're talking about escaping growthism, right? So we've talked a lot about growth on this podcast. I mean, it's kind of like in some ways, the underlying driver of all the stuff that is the expression of Crazy Town. So I don't necessarily think that we should spend a lot of time talking about growth and the unsustainability of it and our dependence on it. But, maybe we would just want to do like a quick jaunt through Growth Town.
Does anyone here an expert on sort of this?
Well, boy, howdy, did you guys come to the right place.
You teed them up.
Thanks for that. So, I've done my deep dive into ecological economics and the ravages of economic growth. And we've actually got a buddy here in Post Carbon Institute, David Hughes. He's on our board of advisors. And he is excellent at compiling stats.
He loves spreadsheets.
And
graphs.
So we just grabbed a few to let you know how the scale of things is increasing here on home planet Earth. So global human population has grown 8-fold since 1800. That seems a long time ago, but it's really not that far back. From 1 billion to 8 billion people today.
Thank God it's decreasing, according to Mark Andreessen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It might soon.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. Global GDP, or gross domestic product, the total value of goods and services, is estimated to have grown over 11,000% since 1800.
That's a big number.
We had an 8-fold increase in people and an 11,000%.
So 11,000% would be 110 times. Is that right?
Yeah. Anyway, we went from $1.1 trillion worth of goods and services to $126 trillion. So pretty crazy. Global energy consumption has grown over 3,000% during that same time. So using a whole bunch more energy to do all of this
So
stuff.
30 times.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Because you started with 8 times for the population, so I'm trying to homogenize.
Yeah. Sorry.
Of course you are.
Sorry. We should give our stats in consistent
800% in population. Okay, keep going. Sorry about this.
Well, that's enough of the stats. I think, though, we do want to talk about the underlying mathematics of growth, and in particular,
Which is, it could just keep going. That's the math, right?
well,
no problem.
That's kind of the idea. I mean, let's look at exponential growth for just a bit. And I remember when I was young, like right out of college, I got this job. And you could join the 401k where some of your salary gets invested into stocks and bonds or whatever.
Yeah.
And I was really at the edge of being able to afford daily living expenses because the job didn't pay that much. Rent was high. Student loans were high.
Right.
But I was talking to an older coworker and he gave me this dressing down. He's like, you have to join
Figure
the
this out.
401k.
Yeah, whatever it takes.
Let me show you exponential growth. If you just invest $10 as a 20-year-old versus starting as a 30-year-old, he was just showing me how much wealth I would amass because of exponential growth.
Yes.
And I'd say like a patron saint of Crazy Town is a professor named Albert Bartlett who died a few years back. But he went on the academic lecture circuit talking about growth. And his insight, his famous quote is, "The greatest shortcoming of the human race is our inability to understand the exponential function."
Hey, what is that, the exponential function?
So the exponential function means a continuously increasing amount. So you can think of something that's growing at 5% a year. Let's say your bank account's growing at 5% a year. That doesn't sound like much, but what it means is that there's a doubling time of 14 years. So every 14 years, your bank account doubles.
Yeah.
And pretty soon it's just skyrocketing. It goes literally off the charts.
Okay.
So first of all, there's great recordings of lectures that Al Bartlett did with students at the University of Colorado when he was teaching there that are worth seeing. They're on YouTube. We'll add a link in our sources. But you can also see why the rich people who have money to invest just get wealthier and wealthier.
Sure.
Right? And part of it is this exponential function.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So now this is also an important concept in biology because it's related to what's called population biology. So the idea that if you have a population of organisms, let's say, you got a population of rabbits or whatever, and they're growing at a clip, and so maybe they can double every year. And so the rabbit population go from 10 to 20 and then from 20 to 40. So you can do this math. It's called the intrinsic population growth capacity of a species. So I used to have this exercise when I taught ecology at Washington University in St. Louis, where I had students do the math on take a bacteria or take a pair of elephants and calculate how long it takes that population, given an intrinsic growth rate, to reach the mass of the Earth. So they had to just take the equations from the book and start with the mass of the bacteria, the mass of the elephants, and then the mass of the Earth and solve for it.
And you're using the
real rate of their growth.
Yeah, like a bacterium takes
like
a
30
couple
minutes
or
whatever to double. Yeah.
Elephants take months and months or even years.
Yeah, years to double. So anyway, it took about 500 years for elephants to equal the mass of the Earth, and bacteria was like 3.5 days. Yeah.
Wow, that's scary. So we only got a few days left here before the bacteria take over.
Well, the point was, of course, that it doesn't matter what you're talking about. Something always stops growth from happening. Yeah. And this is sort of the study then of ecology. It's sort of what are the things that are regulating growth? What are the feedback loops that keep growth from running amok?
Ecology, that's just it's a science, fine. Yeah. But let's turn to another science.
Yeah.
Economics, which is truly a science, because they have equations and everything.
Yeah, so, they have very complex equations.
So, they figured out doing their equations how to just put aside everything you just said about there being limiting factors.
Right.
There are no limiting factors to growing the economy.
Well, and recall, it used to be known as the dismal science, but they didn't like that.
No.
So now we just make it the science of progress, hope, and joy.
Well, this is what's ironic, of course, is that they'll say to themselves, like, economics is all about these painful trade-offs between allocation of resources for different ends, and we're just like the market, letting the market sort out what the highest and best use is. And at the same time, it's like Yeah, but we can do this forever. Like we can keep growing forever.
Right.
So it's just weird.
And here's the thing. We are actually dependent upon that growth. So if we're looking at the economic system, it's not just like a aspiration that we decided to tether ourselves to. It's actually something that is embedded in the entire economy. So for example, when money is created, brought into the world out of thin air, it's debt, right? And so that debt requires growth. It requires it to grow in order to pay back the initial capital, but also the interest on that capital, right? And that is our monetary system.
Yeah. Well, and think about when I was talking about my coworker dressing me down to invest. Investing in the way our economy works with investment requires growth too. We're all aligned. I shouldn't say we all, because I don't think the three of us are, but many, many, many people are aligned with this whole system of I put some money into stocks, into real estate, into investments, and I expect it to be worth more in the future.
And it's not just money. It's actually this requirement for growth or perception of requirement for growth of even human population. And we're seeing a lot of debate right now about the human population question.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people sounding alarm about what they see as declining birth rates, and particularly in heavily industrialized, quote unquote, advanced economies, right?
Yeah.
And they're deeply concerned about that. And the reason they're concerned about that is because we've also created a system that requires more people coming into the workforce. So, a population there constantly either maintaining itself or growing in order to pay in to provide tax revenue, to provide social services for an aging population, right? So there's this basically a system that requires, it certainly can't decline. And growing populations often have led to growing economies.
Yeah, and there's a few things that are weird happening that I didn't foresee related to the finance side of things. And one is that there's this incredible ability to sort of refinance. So the idea being say you have so much debt on your books and it's at 5%, but it's obvious you can't pay that off. The financial system has gamed this so that's we're going to recapitalize you at a lower percent and we're going to restart. It's almost like you refinance your house, right? It's like the 30-year mortgage never gets paid off. Your house is worth more. And 10 years down the line, you get a bigger loan, you start spending more money because now you got home equity and you're paying a lower interest rate or something.
The people who really benefit from that are the wealthy.
Because they have so many assets.
I like that you're always 30 years away from actually owning a house because you refinance, start the clock over, another 30 years.
But this is what's happening in nation states. So you see Japan or whatever and the European Union, this is what's happening for government debt too. It keeps getting refinanced at lower and lower rates. And
it's an expectation that things will grow, so it will eventually get paid off.
Yes, and they're just extending. Now, the other thing about the population, now, of course, the dream is that we'll have robots do the work when everyone's old. So, there's ways.
Well, we better get those robots
around this.
Yeah.
Well, as long as those robots can pay into Social Security, the system.
Well, they don't have a choice. We just write that into the code.
Yeah.
So you're talking about growth imperatives and why it's such an important foundational concept of economics today. Economists from old were kind of debating this, and there was a pretty famous American economist and head of the central bank named Henry Wallach. And way back in the day, he said growth is a substitute for equality of income. So long as there is growth, there is hope. And that's what makes large income differentials tolerable.
So mm-hmm.
You think about that we don't have to worry about how to divide up the pie at all.
Make the pie higher.
Just make the pie. Well,
that's
make it
George
bigger.
W. Bush.
Yeah.
Make the pie higher.
Yeah, that was my favorite. My favorite Bush.
I like it. It's hard to. He knows how hard it is to put food on your family.
Right.
That was a good one too.
Make the pie deeper. Make the pie longer. Yeah, But yeah, you don't even have to ever worry about the distribution. And that's a real problem. I mean, that's probably the biggest critique of capitalism today is that the inequality of wealth grows so large. And there's so many good studies that show how bad that is for society across all kinds of measurements.
Well, and it's not just, within societies, it's across societies, right? And one of the things that you ran those numbers that Dave Hughes provided about energy consumption and GDP and all that. That's been disproportionately in certain countries and not others, right? Who have benefited from this growth.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing that you could think about with that equality and growth is you could turn that around, and we'll get to this in a bit, but you could have greater equality instead of more growth.
Yeah, okay.
You heretic.
Now, just as we've seen all this exponential growth in economic activity, which is all basically human-centered, population, resource consumption, the decline has happened, of course, with other creatures. So the biodiversity crisis. There's, in some sense, even though the claim is it can go on forever, there's actually a zero-sum game happening with the Earth itself.
Because we live on a finite planet.
Yes.
Right?
This is also happening in cultures, the human cultures. And so the number of languages is crashing and around the world because there's this sort of homogenization that's happening. We've talked about this when we talked about globalism.
All right, so here we did it probably longer than I had anticipated to kind of run through sort of the macro situation with growth. But let's just talk about examples of growth that we see in everyday life.
Oh, yeah. This is fun.
It's all well and good to talk about the bigger picture, but like the growth imperative shows up, in the world around us and sometimes in really, really stupid ways. So any examples coming to mind?
I've got the stupidest way, probably.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
It's a competition here.
Yeah.
I might have a stupider way.
Yeah, maybe you will. Let's see.
Let's see.
Well, I want to talk about cruise ships because that's
course
part
you
of
do.
my
You
everyday
love
life.
cruise ships.
I'm on cruises daily.
This is a pretty stupid one.
Yeah.
That's good. I hand you
But
one.
so I looked up the length of various cruise ships from history.
Nice.
So I looked at the Lusitania, which was 787 feet long, and this is from 1907. That's still really long.
Yeah, it's a big ass
But then
ship.
in 1912, 5 years later, came the Titanic.
Yep.
883 feet long.
Wow.
Now, I don't know if all these things end up on the bottom of the ocean or not, but I think those two did.
They did. Both of them.
Yes.
Jeez. Why don't we hear about the Lusitania?
There's a great book about Lusitania.
Okay.
One got shot down. They got not shot down. They got torpedoed.
Oh my
I
gosh.
was going to say, I didn't know it could fly. Incredible boat.
That's a really incredible.
Then I skipped ahead a few years to modern times with the Icon of the Seas, which is the new Grand Champion. It is 1,198 feet long. So, over time, we are growing our really important resources.
Well, look, they have to keep making them bigger so they don't sink.
That's right.
I mean, eventually they'll just turn them into islands.
I kind of want to do this tour where I go see like the worst things in the world.
Do you?
I kind of do. And this would be one of them.
So we're going to the Winchester Mystery House tomorrow.
That's quaint compared to this shit.
No. So, I mean, here's a way to do that.
Yeah.
Get on one of these cruise ships.
Yeah.
Cruise around to horrific
Every
places.
port.
I think you've just invented a business. We get the cruise ship that takes you to the worst
places.
things. That we're going to go to that bar at the top of the Dubai hotel. That
Get the
margaritas.
ships Greenland ice. Yeah.
See, most cruise ships take you to places that are fast disappearing because we're destroying the environment.
Yeah.
You want to see the product of our great genius.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the zero-sum game. You're like, instead of being able to see a tiger in the wild, you can mix your drink in Dubai.
So not everyone gets to go on a cruise ship.
Thank
Rob,
God.
But let's bring it closer to home in terms of other vehicles of transport. And let's look at size of cars and trucks, right? So we've seen a massive shift in the United States.
That's a good shift.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Most people are like, shift? What's a shift?
Nobody. There's no manual.
Nobody's shifting anymore.
I do in my little Toyota.
That's
Go ahead.
true. That's beautiful. A real shift from like sedans, which used to be the typical American passenger vehicle, to now SUVs like trucks, right?
Yep.
That shift has enormously increased the size of the average vehicle on the road. But even certain makes of cars, like the car that I have, Toyota RAV, has grown almost a foot longer and half a foot wider since it was first introduced.
It used to be kind of cute.
Yeah.
Like your kids.
Now it's a huge friggin' beast, which is why I like to drive.
I know that you ran me over when I was biking out
I
there.
did. Unfortunately, I didn't. I just clipped you.
Yeah, I know.
I thought it was a Highlander. It's a RAV, huh?
We have a RAV.
Yeah, okay.
You got it because it's a plug-in hybrid.
Yeah.
They didn't have that.
It's what a Highlander used to be.
Exactly.
That's right.
Yeah.
This is progress.
Do you guys have you seen a really old Honda Civic in recent
they're
times?
just adorable.
There was
Those
a guy.
tiny
It was a little bitty.
They get like 30 clowns in the
You
circus.
could pick it up with one hand.
Right.
Yeah.
Spin it on your finger like a
it's so
basketball.
nice.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know if this is better than yours. Those are good. But the example that came to mind for me was I'm a college freshman, and I'm at UC Davis, and I'm in the dorms in Davis, and not that far, walking distance from our dorms, with this AM/PM mini mart. right? It's a gas station, but they sell like hot dogs and
Slurpees,
soda. So they had come out. This is in 1987. Okay, they came out with the 32-ounce Big Gulp, and you bought your own. You spend an extra 50 cents on your first beverage, and you get your own like plastic insulated mug with a cap that the straw sits through.
Yeah.
And so you go in and you self-serve.
You
get
can
the
reuse
ice.
it.
Yeah, you get some ice. You
They've
fill
moved
up with
beyond
your
that.
soda.
You just
I
toss
would
them out.
blend stuff sometime. I would blend flavors.
Yeah.
So anyway.
32 ounces. That's nothing. That reminds me of this Parks and Rec. Have you ever seen that show?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
It's a great clip talking about soda sizes.
Okay.
Maybe I could play that for you.
Sure.
Well, Paunchburger just recently came out with a new 128-ounce option.
Yeah.
Most people call it a gallon, but they call it the regular. Then there is a horrifying 512-ounce version that they call child size. How is this a child-size soda?
Well, it's roughly the size of a 2-year-old child if the child were liquefied.
Exactly. So I think, right, this is what's happened. That 32-ounce would be like,
If they're
which
so
is
quaint.
small. Yeah, little tiny
So
baby
quaint.
baby beverage. Yeah. In fact, they probably give sodas to babies nowadays.
You got to get them started young.
Yeah.
Okay, I can't resist. I got one more area of growth that I was thinking of. And this goes to the amount of stuff that you can view on TV or stream nowadays. So I remember in, I guess it was 1980, maybe 1979, Pink Floyd came out with their album, The Wall.
I remember that. I
Yeah.
was just like third grade or
Of course,
something. It was great.
But there's a song on that called Nobody's Home, where the singer's lamenting, I've got 13 channels of shit on the TV to choose from.
Well, that's what I had after school back then.
Right.
13
But
channels, that's a lot, actually.
Jason would come home with his big gulp and drink that while surfing through the 13 channels of shit.
Yeah.
Well, then in 1992, so a little bit over a decade later,
Yep.
Bruce Springsteen has this
The
song
Boss.
called 57 Channels and Nothing On. So you get this, exponential growth. I mean, how many things can you access today?
Oh my God, hundreds.
Well, if you go on YouTube, think about
Yeah.
YouTube channels, right?
But I go to sometimes I'll go to the local bar and I'll say, put on the tennis channel. Okay. And they're like, what channel's that? I'm like, I don't know, 700 and something.
Exactly.
It's just like,
So this growth thing, I was thinking about it. I mean, we talked about a sort of dependency on it. We've talked about assumptions that exist that don't question its sustainability. But it is kind of like this sort of like hunger, right? And it made me think of the myth of the Wendigo. Are you guys familiar with that?
I've heard about it. Yeah.
I've only seen it in brief circles in economic discussions
Oh, really?
of this
interesting.
growth.
Oh.
So the Wendigo is Algonquian folklore in indigenous community here in what's called Turtle Island, North America. And it's a mythological creature or an evil spirit, sometimes depicted as a creature with human-like characteristics which possesses human beings. And it's said to cause its victims a feeling of insatiable hunger.
So pretty much the Wendigo has inhabited the souls of our bankers, our economists, our business leaders.
The consumer, the
Right.
people addicted to that unboxing video.
Right.
Yeah, and actually, and that I think is a key thing. It's like the Wendigo has been caricatured in American popular culture in different ways, like horror movies or things like that. But really, it's a parable,
Right.
and it is a kind of a warning. So there was a piece actually about the Wendigo I thought was really interesting, written by a woman named Caitlin Smith for the nonprofit Facing History and Ourselves. And she kind of summarized this really well. Quote, in most traditions, the Wendigo is human in origin and becomes a monster through a process that results either from acts of starvation-induced cannibalism or from possession by a spirit. In the course of the transformation from human to Wendigo, the person exhibits increasing selfishness, violence, hunger, and greed, particularly for human flesh.
Jeez.
This is a story shared not merely for entertainment, but to reinforce the communal values that allow the communities in which this practice occurs to live well with one another and within their environments. So it's a warning, right, about that selfishness, that greed, that tendency that I think all humans can have, but it's sort of a corrective on that to put the community above the individual.
Yeah, pretty clear if you embrace unending exponential economic growth, it ends in cannibalism.
It reminds me of the character from Lord of the Rings, Gollum, like a
Precious, right? Precious.
Wow, that's your
You
best
just wanted
invitation.
to do your goal.
I did a good invitation that time?
Yeah, I think so. I put a stamp of approval.
Thank you. That's the one I can do, I guess. I'm pretty lousy on most of those things. Well, yeah, you can totally see how this growthism is like a Wendigo, consuming and exploiting people on the planet, this impossible quest to satiate this insatiable hunger for more, and it infects us and all our victims. And I want the ring.
Look at you waxing poetic.
Precious, my precious.
Okay, geez, you praise the guy.
Everyone got just totally creaped out and they turned this podcast
We're
off.
gonna have 60 more minutes of Jason saying "precious," and then we'll stop. Well, I've been bringing up friends of PCI. We have in the past worked a little bit here and there with Winona LaDuke, who is an Ojibwe leader. She has talked about the Wendigo, and she said if you spend all your time making a civilization which transforms Mother Earth, instead of transforming to be with Mother Earth, it just doesn't work out, and you end up kind of in what I call Wendigo economics. That's like the economics of cannibals, right? That's what she said. And it's probably where I heard of this in the past. I was like, wow, yeah, we are basically consuming ourselves.
I think we should adopt that. So when people talk about economics, modern economic theory, we should just call it Wendigo economics.
That's pretty
call
nice.
it what it is.
That would be cool rebranding in universities. Like I'm taking Wendigo economics.
101.
Yeah.
This is a message to all you crazy townies out there. Sometimes Jason, Asher, and I wish you could be here in the room with us when we're riffing on eco-modernist nightmares, the end of capitalism, the collapse of civilization, and lines from Arnold Schwarzenegger movies. Since you can't be here, maybe we could still be in contact in another way. If you've got a comment about the show, or you want to throw some shade at us, or you got a question...
Or you have a suggestion of escape route stuff.
Yeah. Maybe you got a story of your own you want to share. Go over to Apple Podcasts or iTunes and leave us a review and write your comment there. In your comment, include your idea, whatever it is, and we'll think about sharing it in an episode.
How's this? I'll be back. Is that any good?
Oh my God, that's terrible.
You try it.
Get to the chopper! Time for listener feedback. We got a comment from Will Powers 13 in Apple Podcasts. He says, loving the theme of the new season. That's the title of his review. And he said, I really enjoyed the first episode about industrialism. Since much of it was about industrial agriculture, it would have been nice to hear more about local escape routes in terms of creating food sovereignty and regional food shed resiliency plans. He goes on to talk more about agroecology, permaculture, hopes that we might talk about eco-villages a little bit. But his final statement is, this continues to be the best podcast out there.
Oh, that part's true.
The rest of it, yeah.
Well, I appreciate it. And I realize that and this is something we'll get better at during this season, is getting more into the escape routes and less on sort of bashing the ism du jour.
Yeah. And I should say that I've had some correspondence with Will in the past. He's a fan of what we do at Post Carbon Institute, and he's a fellow traveler out there trying to do good things on the landscape. So way to go, Will.
Thanks, Will. All right, this is a section on the Marvin Harris Memorial Lens of Doom. So Marvin Harris, anthropologist, the theory of cultural materialism, basically saying that understand a society, you need to understand three levels. You need to understand the infrastructure, sort of the physical world. How do they acquire food, energy, the built environment? Structure, so their laws, they're basically their social norms. And then the superstructure. So what that leads to then are their major belief systems and mythologies. Okay, so let's look at this growthism through this lens of cultural materialism, starting with the physical infrastructure, right? And the usual suspects for these foundational drivers of growth are the materials, right? So the idea that you have the fossil fuels, that you can mine more, you can build more equipment and machinery, and this causes a positive feedback loop that supports now a growing population of humans, right? So expanding the machines that can harvest more energy, more cement, more grains, et cetera, and build out cities.
Well, like you said earlier when you were talking about elephants and bacteria or whatever,
right.
Everything needs energy to grow, right?
Yes.
So in this case, we've been burning ancient sunlight primarily.
Yep. We keep saying this, I know, on this show.
Well,
it's basic, fundamental.
Yeah.
One piece of the infrastructure that I want to zero in on a little bit is technology writ large. And the reason I'm thinking about it is whenever an economist or somebody who's a growth booster comes along and waxes poetically about technology, they're always talking about it. It's our path to being more efficient, right? Like we can use technology to do the same thing with less materials and less energy. But that's not what we see happening in the real world. And an example I could give you is buildings. It's like over time, we've gotten better and better about how to make a building without requiring as much energy, or we can make it stronger with material advances. But instead of just building the same size building with less material, we end up building the taller and taller skyscraper, and we make more and more buildings, kind of a rebound effect that's pretty well known, but ignored by most mainstream economists.
I mean, we talked about that with cars. It's the same thing, right? They've become more fuel efficient.
Yeah, they're a little lighter per...
Turn that into a bigger car.
Per size, they're lighter, but
Yeah, one other thing around infrastructure, it sounds weird to call people infrastructure, but we had talked about it before, which is a growing population being needed to fuel growthism, right? So the infrastructure of having more humans,
the labor force,
to provide labor and a consistent tax base is sort of part of the infrastructure of growthism. Let's talk about the structure, right? The sort of the rules and the human systems that we've created that reinforce growthism. We already spoke about the existence of debt-based currency driving growth and, in fact, requiring growth. GDP is the primary measure of the well-being of an economy, right? And we're looking for growth in GDP. It's one of the main measurements that governments use. It's how people gauge the health of the economy. You see that being true for businesses as well. The growth imperative is absolutely embedded in corporations, particularly publicly traded corporations. People buy shares because they want the value of the share to grow, right? But you also see even things like federal tax credits, right? So there are federal tax credits in the United States for every kid that you have.
Sure.
Which is not to say like people are having 8,000 kids because of federal tax credits. But you look at the rules that are being put in place, the incentives that exist, and it's definitely towards growth in every direction.
Sure. Okay. So then this all leads to then belief systems, mythologies that reinforce and essentially justify what already exists, right? So this is the superstructure. And I run into this a lot when I start to have conversations with, say, city officials or, kind of mucky mucks in the community, maybe like a banker or whatever, or a professor. And you start asking questions about like, hey, what's the optimal size here? Like, have we thought about the size of our city or town in relation to the broader environment? And we have goals, for example, of reducing our environmental impact with, greenhouse gases is the one that everyone cares about a lot. But most are really going to push for a bigger is always better philosophy. You run into this all the time. Like, well, an ideal sized city would have more law firms that can do more specialized work to help our businesses thrive, or more medical facilities. So we have to go as far to get the operation.
Yeah, I'm not even sure that most folks would understand your question. Like you say, what's the optimal size? And the answer is bigger.
Yeah, it's almost always that. It's absolutely amazing. And you try to say, well, when you get bigger, you actually have more of a footprint, and you try to bring an ecological footprint. And then it's like playing a pinball machine and you tilted it. You just tilted it. So the game is over. You got to start from you put another quarter in. But
and this is also how you see we get completely locked in, right? Because you think, well, we have to grow our tax base in this community. We have these problems we need to solve. If we had more tax revenue that we could generate, that we could solve those problems.
Yeah.
Not thinking that maybe growth is actually could be potentially exacerbating
the
some of those
problem.
problems.
Yeah, right.
On the superstructure side, it was funny. Like I did a quick Google search, right?
Okay.
I just typed in examples of businesses that refuse to grow. And let me just share with you the first page of results because they were all negative. Right?
Yeah.
So these are some of the results. 50 brands that failed to innovate. 10 businesses that failed to adapt. 10 companies that failed to innovate. 10 great companies that lost their edge. It's all like,
wow.
As soon as you ask a question, I was like, they refuse to grow. Like I was thinking about it as like a positive.
Yeah, right.
I like
the results are
your
negative.
last one didn't mention failure at least.
Yeah.
Your
right.
first ones were all that failed.
So you were trying to find like a positive example
example.
for our show.
Exactly.
And it was almost impossible.
It was all negative.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Every decision I've ever made in my entire life has been wrong. My life is the complete opposite of everything I want it to be.
If every instinct you have is wrong, then the opposite would have to be right.
Okay, let's look to some other species to think about how to do the opposite. Jason, earlier when you were talking about the work you did to teach classes at Washington University, I think you started that talking about rabbits and doubling their population. Well, if we think about the term, quote, breeding like rabbits is sort of a common phrase. And the idea, of course, is that as long as there's food around and there's not that many predators, rabbits just have a party and cute little fuzzy bunnies are popping out everywhere, right? The problem with that is it turns into a boom and bust cycle, right? They multiply so much that they eat through all the resources that they're dependent upon, and they end up dying in kind of horrible ways, really.
Yes.
And this is something we're hoping, not to experience as humanity. So there are other creatures out there that do something different. I was recently listening to an episode of the Tooth and Claw podcast, and they were talking about bears, grizzly bears, and how they can self-regulate. And I didn't know this. It's pretty fascinating. But when a pregnant grizzly bear develops an embryo, it floats around inside her uterus. It sounds kind of relaxing, like it's in a swimming pool or something, But it can stay there for months. And then when that potential mama bear goes to the den to bed down for hibernation, how much body fat she has actually determines whether that embryo is going to implant in her uterus or not.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so it's like, she didn't eat enough. There's not enough resources. Let's just put a hold on this.
Right.
And the embryo never goes anywhere. But if she does have enough resources, she was eating BLTs all fall long or whatever.
Big gulps.
Yeah. She had the
Lots of
child-sized big gulp.
Yeah.
Then she'll have the offspring.
That is interesting. So yes, you're talking about these dynamics of what are called, overshoot and collapse as a potential. And so the ability to not do that, there's a regulation process, and the regulation could happen externally because of events that are not that nice, or there's an internal regulation. So the bear has a natural internal regulation, it sounds like. I know kangaroos do as well. There's lots of examples of this. And I would not be surprised if humans have that. There's stories of, for example, of like female athletes. Like I had friends who were like in college, female athletes, and it's like they stop menstruating kind of thing. They're just working so hard that their body just sort of shuts down that part, which is fascinating. Maybe that's a sign that you're too stressed out. But there's ways then maybe of regulation of what's going on in reproductive cycles. But it could be cognitive, right? Like if you're sensing that there aren't enough resources in your environment, then maybe you hold off on having kids. And that seems to be what's happening maybe now.
Well, with economic pressures, things are, I think people feel a lot of economic difficulty, the cost of housing and, maybe student loans or whatever, like has definitely led some people to to hold off on having kids because of financial thing.
Yep.
But, these cases we're talking about sort of individual forms of self-regulation amongst humans. But the truth is we've blown past otherwise. I mean, you talked about external limits, right? And typically when you have healthy ecosystems, there's that dynamic at play, right?
Yes.
And we just said, fuck that, basically. Apex predator or apex species on the planet, and we found ancient sunlight as a form of energy for ourselves, and we've just gone crazy for a while and have not self-regulated. In fact, we create a system that says just keep growing.
Now, this is the do the opposite portion of our show. So what we're suggesting
act like a grizzly bear.
We act more like the grizzly bear, and we impose regulations on ourselves in spite of what the Supreme Court might want us to do, that we take care of the situation and impose a slowdown and maybe a reversal, like what you might call.
This may be our best do the opposite ever is to stop acting like rabbits. Is pretty much what we're saying.
Be the bear. Yeah. So let's talk about visions for let's look through a Marvin Harris lens, but a positive one.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So
good luck.
What are visions for different infrastructure, structure, and superstructure?
Right. Okay. Infrastructure. What drives me crazy is the buildings that go up. Like, Corvallis is growing like crazy. And I lived in California for a long time. And I remember being there during the build out of the latest housing bust, right? And just the neighborhoods that would spring up overnight. And I've been to Phoenix, Arizona, and that, and you just
all the way to Tacoma, Philadelphia, Atlanta, LA.
Yeah. Oh my God, I want to sing right now. But anyhow, I'll save our listeners. But what we do, the building materials we use, like the fact that we have these industrial building materials to quickly just put up this shit housing. And of course, people need housing. I understand that. But what if our infrastructure was aligned with like materials that were locally sourced, biodegradable, and all we could build was with what we could gather, locally, maybe semi-regionally. Wouldn't that be it would look beautiful. It would look like these towns that you go visit in Europe from like the 1500s that you think, or Italy, right? Like they're gorgeous, right? Or the architecture in the Southwest. You go to like the Taos Pueblo and you see these places. Like it's not like they're not gorgeous, beautiful places. Oh, would
built with quality and built to last.
Quality and care. And the people know how to do it themselves.
Well, the first thing I'm doing when we finish this episode is to pull the metal roofing off your house and replace it with straw.
Yeah, if we can dig some straw up, but we gotta do a good job.
No smoking is allowed near your house. Well, no, I love that idea. I've been to the Taos Pueblo. It is a sight to behold and
Well, obviously it'd be appropriate for the environment that you're in. The materials that you're using, whether you're building for heat or cold or a combination or whatever. Climate might kind of fuck with that a little bit, but yeah.
Well, let's turn to the structure, and there are a lot of things afoot right now that are kind of going against the policies of growth, especially in Europe, and look at the degrowth movement. I've studied steady state economics. There's also now donut economics. So you've got these ideas coming up with new policies, and there are actually hubs, academic hubs around the world. You got the Universitat Autonoma de Barcelona has a lot of degrowth action going. University of Vermont here in the United States, Leeds University over there in England. And we've got allies that have done really well with pushing ideas. I, of course, go back to Herman Daly, and he's got his predecessors where he talked a lot about uneconomic growth.
Yes.
The notion that economic growth at some point turns a corner. It's like maybe it was producing benefits faster than costs, but at some point the costs, like you were talking about, Jason, the biodiversity loss and the habitat destruction, we're basically undermining ourselves. So that's,
the big gulp causes diabetes.
Right. Uneconomic growth, right? So just shout out to Jason Hickel, who's been doing a bunch of work on degrowth, Kate Rayworth, her Donut Economics, where she's looking at how do we meet people's needs without undermining the life support systems of the planet. All of this stuff comes down to pretty straightforward policies.
Yeah.
I'll mention a couple, but you can go back to our slew of former episodes and get a lot of this stuff, but we need limits on throughput. We should distribute income and wealth in fair ways. We should definitely re-regulate financial systems. My God, we should use different measures of progress. GDP was never meant to be a measure of progress, and somehow we've done that. In our globalism episode, we talked about the rules of trade, and those need to be overhauled. So, whole slew of literature, and invite you to dive into the degrowth.
Yeah, there are lots of ideas for new structures. That's for sure.
And both with what you talked about, Jason, for infrastructure, and Rob, what you talked about with structure, these are forms of self-regulation in a sense, right? And that really comes down to the superstructure. And this is the paradox that we've talked a lot about on this podcast, which is we've talked about how infrastructure typically drives structure and superstructure, right? And we know that the infrastructure is going to change, right? We've talked about there are limits, and we're experiencing those limits now. But if we want to kind of get ahead of it, if we want to try to soften the blow of that, then we need to be working on superstructure as well. And so when you think about what is a vision for a different superstructure, instead of more and more, grow and grow, it's a vision and a value set around enoughness, right? And if that is the mindset that we have, if it's enoughness or self-sustainability or sustenance, then it's a shifting of what we're seeking. And you can want more, but people have talked about decoupling. Like we can decouple the consumer economy from material resources or carbon emissions or whatever, which we've talked about before as being essentially bunk. But there are areas where we can grow and we can seek more, but maybe they're more about knowledge or more about wisdom. They're more about connections.
Yeah, new skill sets.
Things that don't require, necessarily more resources or growth in, material consumption to achieve.
Yeah, it's the un-Wendigo that you're talking about.
Yeah.
I wonder if we could decouple economics departments from bunk. Would that be possible?
I think we should just decouple them, put them on. We could take the entire economic department of one of these top prestigious schools, University of Chicago, for example. Let's put it on that cruise ship.
Yes.
Sail it off. You guys have just enough bunker fuel or whatever you burn to get out there, and then you're on your own.
That'd be great.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, let's talk about escaping. Like, if we're talking about escaping growthism, how does that apply in the real world for us? And maybe let's start at the household level. When we were prepping for this episode, the first thing I thought about was this book that my wife had read, which I'll admit I had not read myself, but I remember her talking about it and being actually inspired by it quite a bit. And it was called The Power of Half. And it was about a family that sold their Atlanta home back in 2006, I think it was. And they donated half of the profits of their home sale to a group called the Hunger Project, which was a charity that worked to lessen the hunger of about 30,000 rural villagers in over 30 villages in Ghana, right? And helps them gain self-reliance. A beautiful vision. And they downsized it to a much smaller home. People don't know this. Our listeners don't get a peek behind the curtain too much, but we've had wonderful people supporting us and researching when we do our
My
podcasts.
whole life, actually.
Yeah, I know. You stand on the shoulders of great women, primarily.
Mostly, yes.
Yeah. So do I. Well, we've had wonderful people helping us research and prep for shows over the years. And this season, we've had our colleague at Post Government Institute, Cassidy Thomas, helping us a little bit. So I asked Cassidy, do you mind just doing a little digging into this Power of Half story? And of course, she found, I just have to share this. She found maybe not quite as beautiful as the story as I was imagining. I mean, they did what they did. They downsized, but they downsized from a house that was 6,500 square feet, 5 bedrooms, 8 fireplaces, 4 bathrooms, and a private elevator into their teenage daughter's bedroom. They sold it for $2 million. So this is a huge mansion, right?
Yes.
They gave away half their proceeds, $850,000. Wonderful. And they downsized into a house half the size. But that was still 3,000 square feet.
Right.
So Cassie was like, well, there must be better examples of people doing this. And she found a lot. And I just wanted to share one with you.
Okay.
Which is the Weisses, which is a couple who gave away, or probably are still giving away, nearly 50% of their income every year. Over $100,000. And there's, we'll share a link to this interview that was done with them. It's very much around this idea of enoughness. Like, we don't need more money. We're fortunate enough to have fairly high-paying jobs.
Yeah.
We have all this excess. It's a joy for us. It's like a no-brainer. The way they talk about it is almost just like, why are we even having this conversation?
Yeah.
They're interviewed for a local news station or whatever.
Yeah.
And like, why are we having this conversation? This is just like a no-brainer thing to do.
Yeah.
We don't need this much money.
Well, and I would invite our listeners too to go back. I think it's all the way to season 1 when we had Chuck Collins in this very studio, who came to the same realization at quite a young age. And he's got a book called Born on Third Base, where he inherited a bunch of money as a 21-year-old and was like, I don't deserve this and I don't need it. And he gave it away. Mm-hmm. Incredible.
Pretty amazing. Now, I know you did this search to try to find businesses that, what was the term you used? Like that.
Examples of businesses that chose not to grow.
Right. Now, you did find one eventually. And it's called
on the 17,000th page of the Google results. There was one.
I had to use the Wayback Machine.
Yeah. Well, it turns out there is a business in Washington called Sparktoro, and they're kind of a software marketing company. And it's interesting because if you look at them, they seem like they're a pretty small company, and they're very explicit up front about the fact that, we're not trying to get bigger at all.
Yeah.
And we're fine as a small company. And they basically profess that monopolization is bad, and trying to get out, with some sort of venture capital idea of the 10x returns is bad. You're probably not serving your customers well. So they have this really interesting sort of page that contrasts their approach with sort of the standard approach for businesses trying to just like capture their largest share of the market and outcompete everybody else. And they want businesses to be small and mid-size. They want sector competition, and they want to be able to focus on quality and relationships. So there are some examples out there. There's probably more than this.
They have a cool visual on their website comparing what they think of themselves as a zebra company to unicorns. I mean, unicorn is a term in the business world for a company that's just like takes off like a Facebook or whatever. You
put in $10, you become a millionaire.
Yeah, exactly. And they're just contrasting the purpose, the outcomes, the how, the approach, and the who. And I think it's really helpful. I will say, you're right, my Google search was disappointing, but there are many companies that are, you look at the B Corp movement, there is no shortage. I mean, it's definitely not the norm, but at the margins. And I think as we see, I think you see younger generations questioning like the career path that they might take and what's the purpose? Like, is it worth taking on debt to get a high paid job that I only get in order to buy shit and pay off that debt? So people are looking for alternatives, and there are definitely companies out there that
and a lot of them people want to work for they don't want to work for a company that they think is just awful and have a bad mission. Right.
So. I mean, I would, but nobody wants me, unfortunately.
No, not anymore. You're not hireable anymore.
You're not going to get a job at that company because they're not growing. So forget it.
Damn it. I never thought about the downside.
Right. So in thinking about how to escape growthism, we've got the household, we've got the business. If we scale up to something like a community initiative, there's a really cool one that's going on in Cusco, Peru, which I'm excited about because right now, as we're recording this, my stepdaughter is on a study abroad and is actually on her way to Cusco, Peru.
Unbelievable. I've been there a few times, and it's one of the most spectacular places I've ever been to.
Well, so what's happening there is something called, this sounds a little trite, but the Potato Park. Mm-hmm. But
potatoes are very important in the Andes.
But it is really cool.
That's where the potato comes from.
That's right.
I'm psyched about this. So what's happened is they've established what they've termed a biocultural heritage territory. And it's governed by 6 Quechua communities. That's the indigenous folks that live there. And what they're doing is they're teaming up to work on micro enterprises in food and farming, in ecotourism, and the development of crafts. And they figured out that they're going to guide this potato park by principles that are important to them, and they're going to have goals for well-being. And so kind of similar to what you guys were talking about, they take a percentage of the revenues that they get from these micro enterprises and they invest them in communal funds, and it gets redistributed to everybody. So everybody in the community is benefiting. And there's kind of like side effects from this because they're doing this heritage with potatoes. They've increased food security. So like during the pandemic, a lot of people in Cusco were starting to face food shortages, and they were able to share their surplus and kind of put their communal values into work, into practice.
That is a fantastic story. And so I think it's important for us to probably recognize that if you look around the world, the things that you can find on a Google search are often limited to people who have the technology, the reach, and the interest in sharing all this stuff on social media or whatever, or publishing a lot. And you go to these other places, and it might be harder to find.
Right.
But there's probably way more interesting things happening in places like this, remote areas like this, where people are forced to face these challenges and are just as creative as anyone you've ever met, probably.
Well, I mean, think about it. A lot of these traditional cultures, if their dominant operating system was growth, they probably wouldn't still be around, right? It was around sustainability and reciprocity and being in community with one another in the natural world. I'm not trying to paint
romanticize everybody,
an idyllic picture, right?
But most of them had histories of perhaps empire building.
They were dealing with real limits, right?
Yeah.
And now they're being faced by Wendigo economics coming for them. You know? So one of the things that it's a weird dynamic. We don't want to be exploiting and extracting from them models for how to do things differently, but learning from them in some ways helps protect them from the ravenous, rapacious economic system that we and our listeners are still a part of.
Yeah.
Well, I wonder if we can go down to the Wendigo market, like the one you went to, Jason, get us a Wendigo drink. You shove that Wendigo drink down our Wendigo
It just
gullets.
makes you thirstier and thirstier is a problem.
Yeah, you'll never be satisfied.
That's our show. Thanks for listening. If you like what you heard and you want others to consider these issues, then please share Crazy Town with your friends. Hit that share button in your podcast app or just tell them face to face. Maybe you can start some much needed conversations and do some things together to get us out of Crazy Town. Thanks again for listening and sharing.
Today's year of high energy modernity, economic growth, globalization, and political stability has elevated finance to a position of paramount importance. But this is all about to change. Don't get caught as an unskilled buffoon during the great unraveling. Instead, attend Financier Finishing School, a beacon of adaptability that prepares financial professionals for a future where everything they know now is worthless. Our curriculum is meticulously designed to include practical skills such as subsistence farming, landfill salvage and tool fabrication, primitive medicine, and cooking with dried dung, essential for survival during times of financial and social collapse. Additionally, we prioritize soft skills like nonviolent communication and mediation strategies, fostering empathy and community building, because odds are you're kind of a dick right now. Our mission is to transform finance professionals into well-rounded individuals capable of thriving in a world where sociopathic norms no longer suffice. Join us and start counting friends instead of just counting money.
Crazy town, da 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 da, crazy town.